Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PRSA Nashville Diversity Chat. This is our online series for our chapter that we offer to our members and all PR practitioners who may be watching across the country to talk about issues of diversity and how that fits into our industry. This is our fourth chat of the year. This is our fourth and final chat of the year. So we want to thank you for watching and tuning in. We want to thank you for being a part of the conversation using the PR diversity hashtag on Twitter. We also want to thank you for participating in our monthly luncheons and in our programs for those of you who are local, and for those of you who are not local who are tuning in. We just want to thank you for your support of our program as we try to enhance and advance the conversation of diversity in the public relations industry. We have a very special guest today, and all of our guests have been special. Let me thank them for coming and chatting with us throughout the year. Matthias Cavalin with the Zeno Group in Los Angeles, Michelle Smith with AT&T in Dallas, and Cheryl Forsatz with McDonald's in New York. And today we have someone who is not unknown at all to Nashville, very well known in Nashville for being a leader and a champion of diversity. And we thought that it would be fitting to make sure that our last speaker was someone who was based here in Nashville, but is making a global impact. And feel free, for those of you who are just tuning in, to join us in the chat. We want to make this very engaging, as we always do. We want to make sure that you're giving some good feedback and sharing some good feedback, also sharing some good questions. So make sure that you're tweeting us with the PR hashtag diversity, hashtag PR diversity, and also you can submit your questions via the Google Hangout page if you're watching the actual Google Hangout. If you're watching through the YouTube feed, feel free to tweet to me or to PR Diversity or PR Nashville, PRSA Nashville. Again, PRSA Nashville. Tweet with the hashtag PR Diversity, and we'll make sure your question gets to our guest today. So our guest today is Maryanne Howland. She is founder, President and Chief Excitement Officer of Ibis Communication. She's also founder and CEO of the Global Diversity Leadership Exchange. Maryanne leads a team of consultants and creative professionals at Ibis Communication who work together to help brands bridge to new markets via inclusive conversations. Remember that, inclusive communications, rather. She's going to talk to us about inclusive communication. It's very important. She helps organizations focus on inclusive communication that focus on culturally sensitive, socially responsible, and reflect human dignity and respect, which is very important as we PR practitioners focus on our content development and our campaign development as well. She's founder of the Global Diversity Leadership Exchange. This is a unique forum for senior level executives and global thought leaders who are on the front lines of building global communities of inclusion and sustainability. The exchange is a member of the Union Global Compact. Maryanne is also a member of the Multicultural Marketing Committee for the National Association of Multi-Ethnicity in Communication. We know that as NAMIC. She also, as a member of that committee, she works to not only advance that conversation in that community, but also she has judged the cable industry's annual Excellence in Multicultural Marketing Awards. And actually in 2010, she represented the cable industry as a member of the People to People Cable and Telecommunications Marketing Delegation. Something else very interesting about Maryanne is that during the Obama administration, she has attended 4 White House summits, and the 4 are women leaders in the climate finance and investment, women and the environment, White House Business Council, and the Green Business Summit led by the American Sustainable Business Council. She's also been to the White House during the Clinton administration. There, she was recognized for her success of her business, and was led, or how her business led to prestigious honor and an invitation to a lunch on Capitol Hill at the White House in tribute to women business leaders. So she's done some great things in that space as well. Specifically, the space of sustainable business, Maryanne has a huge passion for that. She serves on the board of the American Sustainable Business Institute, which is an advocacy organization for small businesses created to advance public policies that support a just and sustainable economy. She's a member of the Global Advisory Council for Cornerstone Capital, and she's also the past chair of the Social Venture Network. This is a membership network of mission-driven social impact entrepreneurs who are transforming the way that the world does business. Locally here in Nashville, she's done a ton of community work, and she served on the board of the Nashville Chamber of Commerce and is a 2015 Spirit Award winner for the Nashville Chamber. And also in 2013, she was named to the Nashville Business Journal's Women of Influence. She was an award winner there. So we're going to go in a lot of detail and let her talk so much about her role and how important her work is. Maryanne, welcome. Maryanne? Hold on one second. We got some sound issues going on here. There we go. Maryanne, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Welcome.
Thank you. And good afternoon to everyone, and good morning to those on the West Coast. I'm delighted to be able to have this opportunity to talk with you today. Ariel, thank you so much for asking me. But you listed a number of awards that I've received, but I tell you what, one of my biggest honors is I was named Working Mother of the Year in 2011, I think it was, and I'm the mother of a beautiful 21-year-old, and that's my proudest accomplishment. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So besides all of that on that list, for those women who are in this audience, you know, we carry a heavy load, but you know, the part of the art of being successful is just getting it done, and that's what we know how to do. So as Ariel described, at Ibis Communications, we help brands bridge to multicultural audiences via messaging, media, and strategic partnerships. And our work falls into two categories. Helping companies with branding and communication support for diverse workforce recruitment, supplier diversity, and community partnerships. And the second category is inclusive marketing for internal and external markets. We develop strategy, execute creative for online and offline marketing, plan media, develop websites, and produce and promote events targeted to corporate America's key markets of opportunity, which have been defined as African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women, veterans, LGBT, and people with disabilities, and one of the newest emerging markets, Native Americans. So at Ibis, we have a team of marketing talent that includes strategists, producers, writers, designers, and event planners, all specialists in inclusive communications. And we often form collaborative partnerships with outside agencies and consultants as needed to provide our clients with enhanced capacity to help with specific projects such as implementation of a grassroots strategy or a global campaign. Our current clients include companies such as Pitney Bowes, The Hartford, HCA Healthcare, Digital Diversity Network, which is a organization that focuses on diversity in the digital and tech arena. We have worked alongside the cable and telecommunications industry for over 15 years with companies such as Scripps Networks, Black Entertainment Television. We worked on the launch of TV One, and with organizations such as NAMIC and the Walter Case Foundation, two trade organizations that support diversity in the cable industry. Now, Ariel asked me to describe what's life like at our agency, what we do, what kind of projects we work on. And the best way to begin to describe that is to start with a story. So this is going back a few years, but this story is so succinct. So one day I get a call from the folks at the leading company for music collections that shaped your life. You probably know who I'm talking about. Well, they had a music collection called Rhythm and Blues that wasn't selling. Now imagine, it includes all the R&B and soul hits from the 50s through the 70s with hits like Respect, You Are My Everything, Let's Get It On, Midnight Train to Georgia, Heard It Through the Grapevine. I'm sure you remember those. And you probably know the words to all those songs just like I do. And if I asked you, you could probably hum the tune. So the idea of packaging this special collection of more than 400 hits to market, to sell to a white demographic of 40-year-olds was inspired by the 80s hit movie, The Big Chill. And The Big Chill was a movie about some former college friends who gather for a weekend and work out some old issues. And the stars were Glenn Close, Jeff Goldblum, William Hurt, you know, those guys. And so, but the theme music behind the movie was Motown. So the folks at the music company are wondering why, if they've put together this remarkable 20 CD collection, why is it not selling? And for 11 years, they're trying to sell this product, Rhythm and Blues, to a white demographic of 40-year-olds. And so the call was, Maryanne, you know, we've got this collection, listen to it, tell us what you think. So as soon as I popped in the CD, I knew it was gold mine. So I called my girlfriend and we start singing words to every song. I'm your puppet. Beauty's only skin deep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, Jimmy Mack. So I called the folks at the music company and asked, why are you trying to sell this to white people? This music was made for us, by us. You should be targeting black people. It's our music. White folks who love it will buy it, but black folks will own it. So they got it. I think they understood. So we renamed the entire collection Solid Gold Soul. I rewrote the liner notes to reflect our cultural perspective and authenticity. The original notes were written by a writer, I think from Rolling Stone, who wrote things like, inside the liner notes for the 1970 CD, he described it as the year that would be remembered more for the years the Beatles split than the year Diana Ross and Supreme's parted company, the year B.B. King had his first top 20 pop hit, or the year the Jackson 5 arrived. So I took out the reference to the Beatles, obviously, and changed it to read 1970 will be remembered as the year Diana Ross and the Supremes parted company, the year B.B. King thrilled audiences despite the lyrics to his song The Thrill Is Gone, and for every young girl who ever dreamed of marrying Michael, Jackie, Jermaine, Tino, or Marlon, the year the Jackson 5 arrived. So we completely redesigned the marketing campaign targeted to African Americans, created a direct mail piece with the headline, if you can see it here, it says, you're invited to feel the power, the passion, and the soul. And then inside was a brochure. And I don't know if you can see this. There it is. This is a brochure reflecting an African American culture that says it was more than a sound. It marked an era of musical breakthroughs for Black Americans. And the broadsheet headline for inside the direct mail package is too big to show you, said, move over, Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart. This is classical music. It became their best-selling CD collection in the company's history. And you can still find them on Amazon right now and they feature in our cover design.
Wow.
So I suspect that had their staff been more diverse at the time, they might have saved a ton of money in 11 years of missing the market. That's the value of diversity and inclusion, a marketing hit. So that story is a perfect example of why it's so important to have cultural intelligence inside the organization for opportunities like that so that you either don't miss the mark or don't miss an opportunity. Our ideal clients are those that get it. They understand the changing demographics, embrace it, and deploy marketing strategy to gain market share and sustainable growth. A look at the top companies for diversity and inclusion are the same top companies on the New York Stock Exchange year after year. Sodexo, MasterCard, AT&T, IBM, Wyndham Worldwide. These companies like them that expect to continue to grow understand the importance of diversity and inclusion. By the year 2040 or sooner, the U.S. will be a majority-minority community, like the rest of the world. Pitney Bowes has been our classroom and our client since 1997. The company is a provider of global e-commerce solutions, shipping and mailing products, location intelligence, customer engagement, and customer information management solutions. They're based in Stamford, Connecticut. And the company has over 16,000 employees worldwide. So in 2000, we produced a project for Pitney Bowes to celebrate diversity around the world for Global Diversity Day. It was the first such corporate-wide event for any company. It was celebrated in its 134 offices around the world. And we had the opportunity to film employees sharing their unique culture and perspectives in their offices in Hong Kong, Mexico City, Tokyo, London, Sydney, in Stamford, Connecticut, where they are headquartered, and created a video that opened with the CEO's commitment and leadership on diversity and inclusion wherever we are in the world. It was simulcast worldwide, and employees loved it. They raved. It was so innovative that Michael Critelli, who was then CEO and chairman of Pitney Bowes, was interviewed on CNN for being the first company to do something like this. He talked about why diversity was so important to the bottom line, about how a diverse workforce drives innovative solutions, helps companies better connect with customers who can relate to people who share a culture and speak the same language, provide connections to quality suppliers, and help build relationships with communities that helps build brand awareness and brand loyalty. Now you can imagine how excited we all were, not just for Pitney Bowes, but that this message was communicated to the global business community. But most important, what we at Ibis learned firsthand is that diversity and inclusion has a different meaning in different parts of the world. That was 15 years ago when we began to turn awareness into purpose. As we talked to leaders at multinational companies like American Express, Textron, Pitney Bowes, we realized that global diversity and inclusion was and is a challenge for business leaders on the front lines of opening new markets around the world. Major corporations may have begun to develop a level of sophistication and multiculturalism in the US, but found that those best practices are not exportable. And that in fact, in the global economy, the majority are people of color, and in fact, the global economy is multicultural. So global companies understand those facts and are now facing new and unpredictable challenges every day as they attempt to grow their businesses in new territory with unique cultural sensitivities. They learned that beyond languages, there are a myriad of cultural and complex challenges tied to history, religion, culture, gender, just like in the US, but that are unique to communities everywhere in the world. For example, in Japan, women still struggle narrowing the gap between women and men in the workplace. In Sydney, Australia, Aborigines are still struggling for equal opportunity. In London and in Holland, Muslim groups experience exclusion. So what does that mean? It means there's a lot to learn. So this sparked the idea of something we created called the Global Diversity Leadership Exchange, which is a forum to garner collective intelligence among senior executives from companies such as Toyota, General Motors, Sodexo, Wyndham Worldwide, UBS, and global thought leaders who are on the front lines of opening new markets abroad. Our speakers and participants find it not only informational, but inspirational. And we're very proud of that. One of our speakers was Bunker Roy. I have to tell you about Bunker Roy. Amazing. He's a social activist and an educator and the founder of Barefoot College in Talonia, India. Now, Bunker shared a story of how he helps communities in poor countries around the world implement technologies and practices that create economic, social, and environmental well-being. He trains grandmothers to become barefoot solar engineers because he says men are untrainable. If you train a man, they will leave the village to go conquer the world. But if you train a woman, she'll stay and teach and take care of the village. So he said, and he says of his journey that, and this is his words, I had the most snobbish, exclusive education any Indian could have had the misfortune to have. And then he went on to found Barefoot College, the only college in India built by the rural poor for the rural poor. The college takes illiterate and semi-literate from the lower castes and from the most remote and inaccessible villages in India and trains them at their own pace to become barefoot water and solar engineers, architects, teachers, communicators, pathologists, midwives, IT workers, accountants, and marketing managers. It's incredible. Once trained, these villagers work within their own communities, which makes them less dependent on outside skills. And the term barefoot college is both literal and symbolic. Millions of people in India live and work barefoot, but the title is also used as a symbol of respect for the knowledge that the poor have. So his message, treating people with dignity and respect is the way to progress. Beyond the speakers, the Global Diversity Leadership Exchange features global market case studies, talking circles, and commitments. It's a unique convergence of commerce, culture, commitment, and communications, and attendees address the myths, the realities, and the leading indicators for driving global success through diversity and inclusion and sustainable business practices. We produced the event, which has been held annually, and the first two were in 2012 and 2013 at the New York Stock Exchange, and the last two at the United Nations. And we're planning to host an event in London next year. So I'm going to stop there. That's a lot of information, and invite you to ask a question, and I'll try to answer.
That's amazing, Maryanne. Wow. I don't even know where to start with the questions because I think you've addressed so much. I really like what you said. Maybe we'll go this way. I really like what you said about cultural competence. Speak to cultural competence from the perspective of what a PR practitioner should have in approaching their audience.
Well, you know, an audience is a mindset, not a demographic. It's a mindset with cultural influences. And so when you think about your product, service, or business in terms of connecting with that audience, putting yourself in the mindset of it means, you have to have a cultural understanding. You need to understand how that person lives and breathes in their world, in their work environment, as a consumer, as a member of the community, as a corporate citizen, as a citizen. So it's critical that PR experts really take time to understand what those differences are. And one of the things that's important, because not any one person can understand it all, is that if you have the talent and resources within your cadre of experts who can help you speak to those particular mindsets, then that's a valuable tool that can help prevent a mistake like that company made when they completely missed the mark on what turned out to be an incredible product. Well, when you have people in the room who are communications experts who can understand that, they can help you over that hurdle. I think it's important that expertise comes in as many different perspectives as possible. So the more diverse your internal workforce is, the greater opportunity for innovation, the greater opportunity for being able to broaden your audience because of the additional capacity to reach to different communities of people. So I hope that helps answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. You started in telling us, you gave us a classic case of how organizations miss the mark with their audience. And I think cultural competency is very important. And unfortunately, it seems as if not only senior leaders, but, you know, as PR practitioners and communicators, we're often expected to, you know, reveal or expose some of the idiosyncrasies and some of the, you know, small things that are very, very important to an audience so that we can nail it and get it right. But I think that we have to focus very closely on not missing that mark as it relates to our audience. So you're right in saying that our audiences are, that's a mindset versus a demographic. And I think a lot of times we get kind of caught up in
I'm losing you.
We get caught up in, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
We get caught up in the numbers of the demographics versus the lifestyle. And as you said, the mindset of an audience. Speak a little bit more about, you started off giving us feedback or actually giving us a story, as I said, a classic case study on what has been done wrong and how a situation that, you know, was mistargeted, if you will, and then how you were able to strategically, you know, reintroduce a campaign that specifically focused on a target market that would pick that product up immediately and something that would resonate with them. Do you have any other examples, truly, how you've seen maybe some companies?
Yeah, well, here's another example of marketing, effectively marketing a product to a specific mindset. So we had another client, a fast food client, and I won't mention her name because as a commitment to our agency, one of the things that we have sort of begun to alter in our evaluation of what kinds of clients we serve because of our commitment to sustainable business products, because of our commitment to social justice, equal justice, environmental justice, we are very selective and probably likely would not take on another fast food company, especially one that participates in what we term here as fast food belts in communities of color that we think are supporting, you know, health issues. So, but for this particular fast food company that was trying to penetrate the market, the African-American market, one of the things that we learned from a little bit of research, some of it is intuitive. And this is the thing about having people who are culturally sensitive on staff. There are things that are intuitive that we just know because of how we walk through life. And so one of the things that we know is that beauty salons and barber shops are a center of family, community, conversation, gossip, dirt, and everything in between. And we spend, and women, Black African-American women, when we go to the beauty salon, we're in there for hours. We're in there for 3, 4. And if your hair is natural and it's locked, then you're in there, because mine is, and I can sit in a chair for 10 hours when we're going through, you know, the traditional monthly lock maintenance. Well, in that time, inevitably, there's a break in the day and there's a food call. And somebody gets a menu and picks up the phone and places an order, and then whatever favorite, you know, restaurant nearby gets a call and then gets a huge order for a massive amount of food. And so beauty salons are a major consumer for restaurants and fast food places. So we knew this. So what we did was target a specific campaign to beauty salon owners. And what we did was we had very attractive men on bikes deliver flyers to each hair salon in targeted zip codes. So you can imagine in a salon full of women, when some hunk rides up at the door and walks in. All the chairs swivel. He gets tons of, a lot of flirting goes on, and everybody has a good time. And then you can bet your bottom dollar that the next time there's a food call, you know who they're calling. Right. It was a hugely successful campaign, and even though it took a lot of effort because it was very grassroots, the payoff, the return on investment was huge. So that kind of idea came from, I just understand the Black experience, and yet for a major company meant a great deal of an opportunity for market share based on a strategy like that. So that's another example of what the cultural sensitivity, the value of that in your PR marketing strategy. Is connecting with your audience in a way that's authentic, in a way that's real. And so often we'll get we'll do an ad campaign and it'll be mass market, and then we'll get, can we repurpose that ad for the Hispanic community, and think that just by finding a stock photo image of a Hispanic American, sticking them in that image, that somehow we're connecting. And that's, people can see right through that. And the really awful thing about that is that when a company does that and you come across that non-authentic, that can hurt you more than even your effort to reach them, because they recognize that that's false. They recognize that the community you're targeting gets it, that you don't get it. So it's important to not make that mistake, that just because you have a campaign that has some pictures of people does it for you. It really does take a true, really real messaging with language and writing and a conversation and an ongoing dialogue that is underscored with a real line of personal communication, that people get it.
And that's important, because as you said, those mistakes can be made and companies can completely miss the mark. And I specifically like what you said about how you need to be able to make that connection and have that conversation on a regular basis, and not just, wait until you have to, or you realize that you must be targeting a certain audience. I want to ask you, you mentioned earlier the minority majority shift. Can you speak a little bit more about the impact that will have on brands and organizations in the next couple of years? And you all who are watching, please tweet us with questions. Use the PR diversity hashtag. Tweet us with questions. But Maryanne, speak to the impact of that minority majority shift.
Well, yeah. Depending on what report you read and what perspective of the U.S. Census that you look at, it is crystal clear that and I think I said this earlier, by the year 2040, thereabouts, could be sooner, there's going to be a majority-minority community, which means that most of America will represent groups of people of color or women. Well, they're the anomaly, because we're already in the majority, but women, as we all know, have been largely undervalued. And so there's an opportunity for companies to get it, that women are at additional are a tremendous resource and have tremendous buying power. In fact, make most of the purchasing decisions. So anybody who misses that cue, shame on them. So I think that for any company that's thinking about growing or even surviving and sustaining market share in the future, has to realize that diversity and inclusion is a business imperative. This is not because it's right. That has nothing to do with it anymore. It is really about survival. So if companies are not opening their eyes to understand that, then that narrow focus is, I think, what is going to be is going to lead to some, downfall of some companies. What that means is, and when you think about it, they call it, multicultural marketing, and there's definitely current day a very good reason for multicultural marketing, but mass marketing should be multicultural marketing. There should be no difference. Any budget now should be just multicultural marketing, because that's what the future is. So the idea of creating a budget for mass marketing and then these other isolated buckets, that's 20-year-old thinking. I think the progressive business, like the Nikes of the world and the IBMs of the world, what they know and understand is that mass market is multicultural marketing, and making sure that if you're marketing to the mindset and you're in a focus group and you have every persuasion responding, reacting to whatever the message or the story is, that's the home run. And it's more economical. Mm-hmm. So to create these budgets, all these add-ons, for one, I think it can lead to being misread by those target market groups as, oh, but this is false, or we're on the side, or we're the other, and that just totally, I think, defeats the purpose of inclusion. Inclusion is a process, and diversity will be the result. And if you think about approaching marketing as inclusive, the voice changes. The voice is now we instead of they. And that's really important thinking, I think, for any kind of communications. The voice needs to be we, and who are the we? And if your organization is smart and diverse and inclusive, then that we comes through in everything, and all your brand messaging. And that's what makes a company, as I said, you look at the New York Stock Exchange top companies, and all of those companies are the same top companies for diversity, because they get it.
That's a great point, because you said something specific about inclusion being the result. And I think a lot of the conversation for PR practitioners is that, or inclusion is
the process. Absolutely. Diversity is the result.
Inclusion being the process, and diversity being the result. And I think that for many of us, we've gotten it backwards. We think that diversity is, we start first with that, and then ultimately somehow, some way, we'll land to some inclusiveness. And I like that concept, and we truly should think about inclusion first, and realizing then ultimately that end result looks and feels and presents itself as diversity. If you would speak to, I want to go back a little bit, and I saw a tweet that we had. Someone tweeted that it helps to practice diversity and inclusion from within, which means hiring a diverse staff. Speak to that. Speak to how you can externally have a more inclusive brand when you can focus on maybe some better hiring practices from a diverse standpoint. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. That's one of the areas that we probably spend at least a third of our time is on workforce recruitment, which I think is really, done well, done effectively, solves all problems. Because if within your organization or your company, you have a diverse staff and a diverse team and diverse consultants, then the net effect is anytime you're at the table and a conversation is being had, or a brainstorming session is being had, or a crisis comes up, and you have everyone in the room with all these different perspectives, higher chance that whatever your campaign winds up being, whatever your PR response is going to be on target. It'll be socially, politically, in every way correct. So I think that, as I said earlier, and, as the CEO of Pitney Bowes expressed so well, is that, when you have more diversity internally, And it's where companies, I think, should start first. For, we get requests for, to help with recruitment. But one of the conversations we have to have is, well, what's it like internally? Because we can do a heck of a job for you and have your phone ringing off the hook. But if when they show up for the interview and get the job and get inside your organization and they're the only one in the room, well, they're not going to be around very long. So there needs to be some, work done internally in creating a welcoming environment that embraces and celebrates everyone's contribution. And the better that you're able to do that, the more likely you'll be able to attract and retain. And just like every individual has their own village or their own network. So once you start bringing people inside your top talent, inside your organization, and you're looking for another hire, well, now you've got people who know your brand, know the experience, are ambassadors, are disciples, and they will go out and help you recruit. And so it helps your organization grow richer. So to the person who made that tweet, that's an excellent point. One of the most important ones I think that companies really need to think long and hard about is making sure that your workforce is inclusive.
Maryanne, I think that you've worded it and expressed it perfectly, and I want to go a little bit deeper with that, though. The idea of buy-in from the top, and you know that very well with the Global Diversity Leadership Exchange. Talk more about what PR practitioners can do, because as you know, as an owner of a communications company, our role as communicators, we are influencers, and we first must be influencers within our organization. Speak to what it takes to try to get buy-in from the top if we realize that our organization is missing the mark, and our senior leaders, we want to get them on board, and we need to create a compelling case. Are we in a bad situation? Of course, and I think I know the answer to this. If we feel like we need to create a compelling case, and then two, what should that compelling case look like?
Well, that's a little bit of a challenge, only because you can't change. It's hard to change it's hard to change a mindset. And so if leadership of a corporation or a business or an enterprise doesn't get it, that's why we don't work. We only work with clients who get it, because we went through the era 20 years ago, 15 years ago of education, where I can't begin to tell you how much time we spent going in with a client and giving them, showing them all the numbers and the projections and, all the bottom line indicators, only to be, and to be listened to. But then when you talk about putting money towards that, it just wasn't, that wasn't connecting. So educating is not profitable. I'll just be, put it, like, so at some point we just stopped and just said, okay. And there are, as you said, more and more companies that, most companies get it, that diversity is a bottom line business imperative and indicator for success. Those companies are the ones that we work with, and what we do is try to enhance what they're doing, add value, and find smarter and smarter ways of getting the job done, because they already get it. Now, for leadership that doesn't get it, wow, bless your heart, that's a challenge. Because the only thing that I know, because we've been there, that we could do is, as a PR professional, as crafters of the word, as the expert messengers, and because that whenever you're challenged with a response or a campaign, make sure that you bring your perspective. Make sure that you take every opportunity to include that message a message of inclusion inside your messaging. And what then is going to happen, I think, is over time, either they'll wake up and realize, wow, that worked, or wow, that was smart, and by you bring them along by experience, that they experience the success of a inclusive message, that they experience the success of the connection you were able to make. So other than that, I don't know how you do it, because I don't think you can just sit down in a room and grab somebody by the collar and just shake them and just tell them, you know, listen, this is how you do it. The other thing I would do as a PR expert, if you have the capacity to be able to put your leadership team in the room with other CEOs and senior level executives who get it, put them in that room. Create opportunities for them to be in dialogue with their peers, because as you know, our influencers are our peers. So if, you know, I would do that, you know, make sure that if I don't, as a person who does branding and marketing and in the work of diversity and inclusion, I'm on the list for every single conference, every single webinar, you name it. And you are too. And so I would try to identify those that target senior level executives and make sure that your leadership gets that invitation. And just, you know, a constant, and make sure they see who else is in there. When they see that Merck's in the room, or Deloitte's in the room, or UBS is in the room, that may make them go, oh, well, maybe I should be there. So I think that we need to use the influence of others around us in order to help make the case.
Will you give us an example of maybe one or two, or perhaps, of your clients or the affiliated organizations with the GDLD who are really, really getting diversity and inclusion right?
Well, Pitney Bowes.
Mm-hmm.
They've been a pleasure to work with for so many years. Here's a story, and I'll share this, and if Cheryl Battles is listening, she'll have a fit. But back in 1996, you remember that was an era, oh, this is a great story. This was an era when I think it was Shoney's, Exxon, and there were a couple other companies that were targeted for discrimination in the workplace. There's a book about Shoney's called The Black O, where there was the practice of when somebody came in to interview, on the application they would color in the O to indicate whether they were a person of color. And then there were other things, there were like 6 or 7 companies. And then the Congressional Black Caucus formed a task force that included Maxine Waters and you know, Jesse Jackson and a few others, who became sort of the policing for companies that were committing these acts of discrimination. Well, in that moment in time, when all of this was going on, it was hot. It was a very litigious moment in our history. This is like I said, it was in the it was like mid-90s. Well, Pitney Bowes got sued for discrimination. Now, the irony is that this is a company whose founder in 1947, or what Henry Wheeler said, that he wanted his workforce to mirror the communities where they work, and had done a stuff there internally. It was a prime example of doing it right. But as I mentioned, it was a litigious, you know, time, and people were taking, you know, advantage of that situation, so they got sued. So they got lumped into that category of these companies that were all like, I mean, it was in like the Wall Street Journal. I mean, it was just, it was a nightmare. Well, Pitney Bowes won their suit. The case was dropped because it was a false claim. But what they learned in that process this company, which is a B2B company, so it's not like they are out doing advertising or lots of external, marketing to realized that they had not yet built an equity and a reputation for being a company that was diverse and inclusive. They didn't have any friends in the community that would sit back and go, no, not Pitney Bowes. Oh, no. And so Cheryl had the wherewithal to realize that it was important to build equity and a reputation, begin building some partnerships and reaching out to communities so that they began to have a social impact. Mm-hmm. And so a company that was spending almost zero in marketing, invested in building a brand reputation for diversity and inclusion, and then in 2004 was named Diversity Inc.'s #1 company for diversity. Now, mind you, in the history of diversity and to this day, is the only B2B company to do that. And that was our charge, under our charge. So what we did was work very hard in not only messaging and imaging, but strategic partnerships. So we made sure that we reached out to, the national Hispanic MBAs and the national Black MBAs, and to the Society for Women Engineers, and all the different, organizations of professionals and influencers, and to make sure that we were connecting. But the value was not only that connection, but you can imagine the social intel that we were able to develop from those relationships. Those relationships have, to this day, become vital. The National Urban League is one of those relationships. In fact, back in 2002, when the Young Urban Professionals was not yet the Young Urban Professionals, that was a Pitney Bowes innovation. We wanted to target urban professionals. There wasn't anything that really existed that was like a group or a coalition that was established. So we created an event for the Urban League National Convention, called it the Young Urban Professionals. And I'll tell you who was there. It was Roland Martin was on our panel, and he was just a cub reporter down in Houston, Texas. We had Naomi Tutu, Desmond Tutu's daughter, was on the panel. Kyle Donovan, the publisher of Envy magazine out of New York, and a couple others. And these were the professionals that were our panels. That room was packed. It was standing room only, and the party lasted out until, afterwards. It had never been done before. It was such a hit that now it's history, and that the Young Urban Professionals is a vital component of the Urban League and their movement forward. But that was led by Pitney Bowes. Now we, gave them the strategy, but they understood that value of that relationship and were willing to invest in that innovative idea, an innovative solution, through listening to the voices of folks who are in the field, in the trenches, understanding what the audiences need, what that mindset is, and created an experience that has, become, a legacy of the National Urban League.
That's awesome. That's an excellent case study. That was exactly what I was hoping you would give. We just got, I can't believe we're almost out of time. We actually have just a few more minutes. I want you to speak a little bit to the local diversity of Nashville and how our industry here can be better advocates for diversity and inclusion. I'm sure we got plenty of viewers who aren't in this area.
Well, Nashville is can you hear me? Because you're fading in and out. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Nashville, I think, has its own unique diversity challenges. And I think that, this city has a lot of work to do, to be quite honest. Though what's interesting about the population, the demographics of Nashville, which we tout so often as being so diverse, it is diverse, but you know what we're not? We're not inclusive. We're diverse, you know, there are communities of people that have come here for whatever reason from all parts of the world. We have the African American community here that is, you know, a lot of it comes from, you know, the fact that we've got Meharry Medical College that graduates 70% of the black doctors in the world. We've got Tennessee State University. We got Fisk University. So we've got black academia coming out the wazoo. It's the buckle of the Bible Belt. We've got, you know, one of the largest Bible publishing companies in the world based here. So there's a lot of affluence. There's a lot of, you know, reason for people to be here. But when you look at the community of Nashville, as it so typifies, you know, many corporations where it's kind of an external diversity, but it doesn't feel inclusive. The challenge then is for, you know, the city, companies, everyone here to begin to understand that, and for public relations professionals, it's kind of the same kind of advice or perspective that I think about when you're working in any environment where your leadership doesn't quite get it yet, that we have to be, you know, extroverted about pushing the envelope, making sure that we show up, making sure that we have to be vocal, and our perspectives needs to get heard. And the more often that happens, you know, it eventually will evolve. But you know, when I look around at the city and I look inside, you know, things like, you know, the latest issue of the Nashville Business Journal that highlights, you know, the 100 most powerful in the city, and there's one person of color and a male that's included in the mix, there's something wrong with that. And so, and you know, so, you know, you have to think about, well, what message is that sending to the world? Nashville is selling itself as a global city, yet our external communications suggest otherwise, suggest that we're not really global. So we have to, in our capacity as journalists, writers, you know, PR experts, make sure that we are policing, you know, and participating in the conversation and making sure that we, you know, shine a light on things like that. Because the way to attract more people of color to the city is by reflecting that this is a community that welcomes that. And how do we do that? By, you know, our external communications.
I agree with you 100%. And I'm so glad that you gave that point and brought it out in a lot of detail. There is a question on Twitter. And after this question, we'll kind of wrap up a little bit, or we'll move toward wrapping up. The question is, most companies, or some companies, may be a little hesitant to start efforts to support diversity. What would you advise that they start with? Should they begin with race, gender? How do they make that determination? How do we influence them on how to start impacting or making an impact toward diversity and inclusion?